Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video of the Pokemon Go Battle League. Today's video, I will be showing you guys some great league battles with this team, and we'll actually be getting a 5-1 with this team. We're starting off with Altaria, Stunfisk, and Articuno in the back. Articuno really isn't a Pokemon to use in the Great League, but I just wanted to try it out. But for the first round, my opponent's first Pokemon is Alolan Sandslash. Alolan Sandslash does super effective damage because Stunfisk is a ground and electric type Pokemon, and Ice is super effective against ground type, so I had to shield that one. But he ends up having another charge move, but I end up taking it because he already took mine, so we're even health. But I also had another charge move ready, and he ends up shielding it. But after my Stunfisk dies, I would have to switch to Articuno because Articuno is a flying and ice type Pokemon, and Sandslash is ice and metal. But even though Sandslash would do neutral damage because ice is super effective against flying types, but not very effective against ice types, he would do neutral damage and I would do not very effective damage to him. But it would be okay because Sandslash would do super effective damage to Altaria since Ice is super effective against Dragon. But I end up taking him out here, but he ends up taking out a Charizard. This is still winnable, but Charizard would do super effective damage since Charizard is fire and flying. And fire is super effective against Ice, so he ends up taking me out. But my final Pokemon is Altaria, and he's left with no more shields. I would have to shield here because Charizard usually runs Dragon Claw or Blast Burn, and Dragon Claw would do super effective damage to Altaria, so I had to shield right there. And right here, I had to use a Sky Attack because I couldn't risk getting hit with a Dragon Claw. But his final Pokemon ended up being Venusaur, and Venusaur is a grass and poison type Pokemon, which was really good for me because my Altaria had a Sky Attack in the back. Sky Attack is a flying type move, and flying is super effective against grass types, so I ended up taking him out right here. That was really close for me, but well played to my opponent. Alright guys, for the second round, my opponent's first Pokemon is Feraligatr. This could have gone both ways because Feraligatr could have learned an ice type move which would have done super effective damage to Altaria, but he ended up having a bite, the fast move bite, which was really good for me. So I ended up getting a Sky Attack right here, but my team has plenty of counters for Feraligatr since he's using Bite. I can either swap out to Stunfisk and get a Discharge off, which would do super effective damage, but I just decided to stick it right here. But he ended up using a Crunch on my Altaria, and I decided to mirror his shields. And instead of using the Sky Attack right here, it was best for me to charge up my Sky Attack. But for his second Pokemon, he takes out Slowking. Slowking is a water and psychic type Pokemon, but he's running a psychic type fast move, which was also really good for me again because it allowed me to swap out to Stunfisk. There are actually two kinds of Stunfisks. One of them has a metal type one, and mine has an electric type one. So I had to swap out to my Stunfisk because electric is super effective against water. But the reason I chose this Stunfisk and not the other, both of them are really good, but the Great League meta usually has Pokemon like Azumarill, and Discharge could easily take him out. But For his third Pokemon, his Pokemon is Flareon, which was again really good for me because ground is super effective against fire, which allowed me to do super effective damage because he also had no shields and I had extra energy farmed up from his Slowking, which allowed me to use that ground type move and ended up taking him out for the second win. Good game to my opponent right here. So moving on to the third round, my opponent's first Pokemon is a Whiscash. Whiscash is also part of the meta in the Great League, but I ended up having a Altaria, which made him swap out to Marowak. This was a really good swap for me, since Marowak is fire and ghost, and so I ended up having to swap out to Stunfisk, and ground is super effective against fire, which allowed me to do lots of damage, and I ended up taking him out. But his Shadow Bone and Shadow Ball moves, his ghost type moves, do neutral damage, so I would have to watch out for that. But he can also learn Bone Club, which would do double super effective damage, since ground is super effective against Stunfisk's types, since ground is super effective against ground types and electric types. But he ends up swapping back out to Whiscash, and he ended up having the fast move Water Gun. Water Gun is a water type move that does super effective damage against ground types. And he also ended up getting a ground type move off of me, which did super effective damage. But after this fight here, the Pokemon that I would have to swap to would be to Articuno, because Articuno would do neutral damage, but I also had to farm up extra energy for my Icy Wind, because Icy Wind is an attack debuff that would come in pretty handy for his Pokemon. But his second Pokemon is a Machamp, and Machamp is a fighting type Pokemon. Both of us do neutral damage, but since he swapped that to Machamp, this probably means he has a Rock Slide, and Rock Slide would do double super effective damage. So I ended up having to swap out to Altaria, because Altaria could take some of the attacks, but it would still do super effective damage, since Rock Slide is a rock type move, and Rock is super effective against flying types. But yeah, this ended up allowing me to farm him down, but he got a Rock Slide off, which was really bad for me, but it was okay because I also had a Sky Attack ready for his next Pokemon from the extra energy farmed from his Machamp. But his final Pokemon was Whiscash, and Sky Attack did neutral damage, which ended up taking him out. Alright guys, for the third round, I really didn't get a lucky matchup because his first Pokemon was a Galarian Stunfisk. Galarian Stunfisk is a metal and ground type Pokemon, meaning Dragon does not very effective damage to him. So I had to switch to my Stunfisk, since ground is super effective against both metal and ground. But both of us did double super effective damage against each other. But Galarian Stunfisk can only learn Rock Slide and Earthquake, which was really good for me. But he ended up swapping out to Skarmory, which is still good for me because my Stunfisk can learn Discharge, and Discharge is an electric type move. But I ended up getting 2, and he ended up taking the first hit, but then shields the second one since it does super effective damage. He still hasn't loaded it, but since he took so long to load his charge move in, this probably means he has the charge move Brave Bird, because Sky Attack usually loads in faster. But he could have overcharged, or it could have been Brave Bird. But in this case, he ended up having Brave Bird. But he ends up taking the third hit, and both of us are down one shield. But for his second Pokemon, he takes out Wigglytuff. This would have been bad, but his Wigglytuff is using, I think, the fast move Pound, which was really good because Charm is an absolute beast. If he used Charm, I would have lost this one because Charm would have done super effective damage to Altaria and neutral damage to Articuno, but Charm still did a lot. But I ended up doing a lot of damage with my Stunfisk, but this was a waste that he did right here, I think, if he didn't have Hyper Beam, because coming up you'll see that he had Hyper Beam, the charge move. This is why he shielded, but this was kind of a waste. But he ended up getting a big hit on my Articuno, which was okay because my Articuno survived, but I had little to no health left for my Articuno. But his Wigglytuff was a few more hits left, and I ended up taking him out. Before his third Pokemon, for his final Pokemon, he takes out Galarian Stunfisk. Articuno does neutral damage to him because Ice is super effective against ground types, but not very effective against metal types, which allowed me to do neutral damage, and it allowed me to get the win. I really didn't have to shield here, but good game to my opponent. Okay guys, for the fourth round, my opponent's first Pokemon is Umbreon. Umbreon is basically one of the metas in the Great League because of its health and damage, because Umbreon has a lot of health and barely anything can counter him except Pokemon like Wigglytuff or Machamp or like Azumarill. But I ended up having to stick the one-on-one because I couldn't really switch to anything, and both of us did neutral damage. So since Dragon does neutral damage against Dark types and Dark does neutral damage against Dragon types, but both of us let our charge moves go through without any shields. But for his second charge move, I had to shield here because it would have fainted my Altaria, and my other Pokemon couldn't really take on the Umbreon, so I had to shield here. But I also shielded there because I had a Sky Attack loaded up after a few more attacks, and it also allowed me to get a lot of neutral damage off from my Dragon Breath. So my Altaria ends up going down, so the best swap would be to Articuno. Both of us would do neutral damage, but if I swapped that to Stunfisk, he would barely do any damage, but it would get his energy up. But Articuno's charge move takes long to charge up, so I decided to switch out to Articuno and farm him down. But I ended up getting an Icy Wind from that, and for his second Pokemon, he takes out Raichu. So Raichu is an electric type Pokemon, and electric is super effective against fire types, so he did chunks of damage to Articuno. So I would have to swap out to Stunfisk. Ooh, and I did a really nice swap before his fast move hit my Articuno. So I had to swap out to Stunfisk since ground types are super effective against electric types, and since Raichu is an electric type, electric is not very effective against both electric and ground types, making his attacks do barely any damage. But for his final Pokemon, he swaps out to a psychic type Pokemon. Both of us were doing neutral damage, but my charge moves barely did any damage. So the play that I did here was to waste as much time as possible. to swap out to Articuno because since I have the swap cooldown, I can't swap out to anything except. So I have to stay with Stunfisk. But for his charge move right there, it ended up being Thunder, and I shouldn't have shielded that. But since I didn't know what his charge moves were, I decided to shield it there. So I make a swap out into Articuno, and my opponent makes a bad play right here. What you should have done was you should have farmed my Articuno down and used the Boost Break against my Stunfisk. But good thing he made that mistake, so I can get a Mud Bomb off and do super effective damage. His ground is super effective against electric types. Good game. Alright guys, that will be the end of today's video. Thank you guys for watching to the end of the video, and please comment down below what you think of this team and what your team is, and please consider subscribing, liking, turning noties on to stay in tune for my next video, which is gonna be the same team but a 4-1 next time. But thank you guys for watching, and with that being said, I'll see you guys on the next video.